So I'm Elijah Mangum. I'm a communication student here at MC, and this is my junior year transferring from Holmes Community College, and I'm interviewing Maggie Wade. So can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do and when you were here and when you graduated and majors and stuff like that?
Wonderful. Yes, I'm Maggie Wade Dixon. I am a co-anchor and reporter at WLBT. I've been there 41 years. I was actually hired my senior year at Mississippi College, and I think the only person who was happier about me being hired there was Dr. Lytle, and who I was still having classes with here at MC, and had told him over and over again, I'm not going into journalism. I'm just doing this because I was working at WHJT. And while I was at HJT, Randy Bell heard me on the air. To show you, Mississippi College is so important to me. Randy Bell invited me over to Miss 103 and JDX after hearing me on WHJT, and then offered me a job there. So I was working there at Miss 103 and WJDX as a radio announcer and marketing researcher. And it all started again with Dr. Lytle and the Todds telling me, we're going to put you on the air. I was like, no, you're not. And they were like, yes, we are. And they did, and that's how my broadcast career started. So I'm coming up on 42 years in February of 2024, and Mississippi College has been such a blessing in my life. I actually, because I was working so much, I had 3 classes left until I would have had my degree. But I got so engrossed in my work and so proud to finally have a job, a paying job. And so I didn't finish up those 3 classes. And in 2020, thanks to Dr. Thompson and so many of my dear friends here, I was able to have a ceremony. And I thought I was coming over to do an interview, and got here, and my friend Tracy Harrison, so many, I'm trying to remember all the names now, but they had worked it out for me to have a ceremony, because that was during COVID when everything was done, virtually. But I got to be on the campus, and Dr. Ruthie Dodson, who is a longtime staff member here at Mississippi College in the education department, and I got my degree and had a graduation ceremony with cap and gown, the whole thing, and it was one of the highlights of my life. I will treasure that moment forever. And I was so happy because I kept my promise to my dad that I would always go back to finish, and I did. So that was a dream come true.
And we'll cover a lot of this, some of the stuff you just said in more detail.
Yes.
But can you tell us from what time period were you at Mississippi College?
Well, I actually started my freshman year at Jackson State University as an accounting major. And I always wanted to come to MC. I actually had a scholarship to come to MC, but I was the 89th member of my extended family to go to Jackson State. And I probably would have been booted out of the family if I had just not gone at all. So I went there my freshman year, and I always wanted to be a corporate attorney. So I said, I'm going to MC. I have to transfer because I want to go to their law school, and I want to go into corporate law. So as a result, I transferred here in June of 1979, and I left in May of 1982. So that was the time. So I went to chapel, loved chapel. I think I was one of the few students who loved chapel and didn't sit in chapel and do homework. I loved hearing the speakers and hearing about the Word of God. So it was one of my favorite things. And I took the 2 classes, Old Testament and New Testament, and just loved it. There was nothing here, my experience here, that didn't help me grow, didn't help me develop, and help me to be the person that I am today, from the faith and the love and the nurturing that I received here. And I think that was the thing that really, really stood out to me as a young student, was that you were nurtured. Everyone wanted you to succeed, and everyone felt like they needed to invest in you. And that was so important to me as a student who was hoping to accomplish and do great things with my life.
And so you kind of addressed a lot of what we talked about what brought you to MC. But if you'll tell us a little bit about you wanting to go to law school,
Yes.
and then how you got into radio, and then we'll discuss about radio, about how your time there was like. So,
Yes.
can you first start off talking about how you wanted to go to law school?
Yes.
And how that got you into radio.
Well, I came here with the full intention of getting my undergraduate degree and then going to the Mississippi College School of Law. And my goal was to go into corporate law. Well, when I got here, my first job was in the athletic department, and I'm still mad at them because they convinced me to participate in the Miss Mississippi College pageant. I had never done a pageant before and felt like I had no talent, but they were like, "You've got to represent us." It turned out to be a great experience, and I made lifelong friends, but I started working there, and one of the coaches, and I can't remember which one, said, "You have a great voice. You should go over to the communications department." And I said, "No, I'm good here. I like my job here." But he stayed after me, and I think he told Dr. Lytle about me. Some kind of way, I ended over at the communications department because I was a marketing major. And they did an interview with me. I didn't realize it was an interview, but they did an interview with me and said, "We'd love for you to do some marketing research for us." And so I worked with the salespeople, and a lot of people didn't realize that WHJT is a commercial station, and they sold advertising. They had a full sales department. And so I worked with them, loved it, and that's how they reeled me in. And then one day they came to me and said, "We're going to put you on the air." And I said, "No, that's not what I'm here for. I'm practicing for my career as a corporate attorney. That's why I'm working with all the salespeople and learning about business." And they said, "No, I think you'd be great." So I came in one day, went to my desk, and they said, "No, go to the studio." And I was like, "What do you mean go to the studio?" And so I went to the studio, and they practiced with me a little bit, and the next thing I knew, I was on the air. Well, then you had to have an FCC license. And to get the license, they required that you take a class in the communications department. So I took that class, and the rest is, I fell in love with it, and did the on-air show with WHJT. I was actually on the air when President Ronald Reagan was shot, and I did that as breaking news. And I had never had to do breaking news before, and it was, I guess that's when, God was just telling me, this is what you're supposed to do. I still was hard-headed. It was not what I wanted to do. And it was shortly after that Randy Bell called me up and asked me to come over for an interview. And for a while, I worked at JDX Miss 103 and WHJT because the hours worked out perfectly. And while I was at Miss 103 JDX, a weather opening came up at WLBT. And to show you how family is, everyone encouraged me. When I told Dr. Lytle about it, he was like, "Go for it." And I was like, "I'm not going to get that. I don't want to be on television. I don't know anything about weather." It was a part-time position. He was like, "Maggie, stop doubting yourself. Just go for it." He encouraged me. And I went for the audition. And back then, it was like a casting call. They had a whole bunch of people come in, and you were given a number, and you actually went in and did a weather. I had never been in a television studio, had no idea what I was doing, but I saw Woody Asaph, and I'd watched him all of my life. So I was starstruck. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, it's Mr. Woody, the Sill Lily ice cream man." And he was just so wonderful. And I said, "Well, what am I supposed to do?" And he said, "Do the weather." And I couldn't reach the States. I'm short, but I could talk about them. And so I did the audition, didn't hear from them for 3 months. So I went on with my life. 3 months later, they gave me another call and said, "We want you to do another audition. You were one of the better people who came in, so we want you to try again." I said, "No, I'm not coming back." And I'll never forget, a dear cousin said, "That is so foolish." And I'm not going to tell you what Dr. Lytle said to me. Dr. Lytle was like, I don't know why you keep doubting yourself. You have a natural talent. It's God. And he's like, God keeps nudging you and you keep resisting. So I went back. An hour later, I had the job and I've been there ever since. And so, like I said, nobody cheered for me more than Dr. Lytle. And I would ask him for pointers and he would watch and he would tell me what I was doing that was great, but he also pointed out the things that I needed to work on. And then the communications department cheered for me and prayed for me. You know, everyone here prayed for me, and that made a big difference because I was awful. I'm going to be honest with you, Elijah, I was absolutely awful. I said Mississippi 1,000 times in that 3 minutes that I did weather, and always my crutch words were, as you can see. And I'll never forget, this little old lady would call me every night after I did the weather on Saturday and Sunday night, and she said, Maggie, we know we're in Mississippi and we can see. Got it. And if you would stop saying that so much, I think you will be great. And the last time she called me, she said, I am so proud of you. She said, you're our Mississippi Magnolia, and we have been praying for you to do a great job. And she said, I'm very proud of you. So I hold on to things like that in my career because you get the bad calls, but sometimes we forget the good. And that was one of those calls that just put a smile on my face, and I've kept it with me.
Can you tell us a little bit about, like, you mentioned Dr. Lytle. Can you describe that relationship and if there was any other mentors you had with your time here?
Oh my gosh, there were so many. The coaches in the athletic department, Miss Coward, and who was in the nursing school. And let me tell you how I met her. I drove off campus and had put my books on top of the car and forgot that they were there and drove off. And so, of course, as soon as I got home, I was trying to figure what happened to my tablets and my books. Well, she and her husband were driving off campus and found it. And my name was written in the book. She found me and called me. And I went and picked up my books and met her. And we stayed connected from that point on. So, because most people will say, how in the world did you know somebody in the nursing department? Well, that's how we met. Oh my gosh, there were so many, Elijah, and that's been so long ago. But from financial aid, when people found out I grew up in Crystal Springs, even though we were in Hinds County, there were alumni of the school who had scholarships, and the folks in financial aid called me up and said, there are some people from Crystal Springs who want to give you a scholarship. And that's the kind of family Mississippi College is. So there are so many people that I am forever grateful to. I'll never forget some of the finance classes and economics, and I was like, this is not my thing, but they made it so much fun. And Amy Brand, who was my marketing advisor, who became a lifelong friend, and the late Amy Brand. And even though she was my marketing advisor and one of my professors, she became one of my dearest friends right up to her death. And so going back and being able to do stories with her because she had breast cancer and she wanted to make other women aware. And it's amazing we're doing this interview on Breast Cancer Awareness Month, but she wanted to make other women aware. And so I got to go back to her as a co-anchor and reporter at WLBT and share her story and her family's battle with breast cancer, which was amazing. So I don't think there's any part of the campus that didn't touch my life in some way. And the people here who genuinely cared about me and seeing me succeed and really being there, being that support system, sharing their faith and their prayers for me, and that's very special. And it's not just me. They did that for so many students here.
And can you go back to the radio station and tell us what you did at the radio station?
Well, I started out working with the salespeople. What happens is the salespeople would go out and they would make calls and they would come back in with contracts, and then those have to be logged in. And so I felt real grown up because I got to put all of that information in and talk to them about their clients. And one of the other things that was so special is that Mississippi College at that time would find a mentor in your area. My mentor happened to be Barbara Travis, who was at that time the marketing director for Metro Center Mall. And at that time, Metro Center was like the mall in Mississippi. And she brought me in. She was my mentor. I got to job shadow with her for a day and got to learn more about marketing and marketing research and what I could bring to WHJT from what I learned from her. And so in working with the salespeople, I knew that was not my lane. I knew I did not want to be in sales. But again, seeing what they did and talking with her and bringing some of the ideas that she talked about on how you can promote the station, how you can let people know that WHJT is there and it's a choice, and the kind of music that they play. And so I came back all excited and talked about that and had no idea that the plan for them the whole time was to get me on the air. And I didn't think my voice was that great, but they did. And so again, once I still worked with the salespeople because I was interested in that, but they put me on the air as a radio announcer. And I did news. We did news at the top of the hour, which is the way everybody did it. And then at the bottom of the half hour, we would do a little weather cast. And so you'd have to pull it off and make it personable. And I'll never forget the general manager of the station at that time came in and he said, "You have a great voice, you have great energy." And he said, "We just want you to be you." And he was like, "We're not trying to make this where you have to have the sultry voice." He was like, "Just talk in your natural voice." So the training continued. And I learned to ad-lib, which is so important in television. Again, God had the plan all laid out, and learn to time it where you would talk until that record, when you were in, back then it was records, and we had the the turntables, and you would talk right until the music started and that kind of thing. So you had to time everything out. And that's what I do in television, because television, everything is about timing. So all of that experience, again, God just laid the foundation. His plans are always perfect. And that's why at this age, and I thank God I've made it to this age, I don't try to negotiate with God or argue with him, because he had a plan for me. And as much as I resisted, I am so grateful that I was obedient and his plan was carried out.
And and you kind of mentioned how MC prepared you for what you'll do now, but
Yes.
before we get into that, I was curious about, you mentioned you had to take a couple of communication classes.
Yes.
Okay, tell us, if you can recall what classes they were.
Well, it was Introduction to Radio. I know that was one, and the other one was just a communications class where we did television, because I was telling Tracy earlier, Dr. Lytle, I spent many days in his office like, this editing thing is a pain. I was like, "Dr. Lytle, this is not my lane." He was like, "No, you're going to get it." And he actually helped me with the editing project, which was like the final exam. And I kept trying to do it, and I kept trying to put stuff in there that I didn't need, and you had to make sure that it was precise. All of that is what we do in television now. Everything has to be precise. The sound bites, how you edit it, how it flows, the beginning, the middle, and the end. And I learned all of that here. But you had to take those two classes, Introduction to Radio. The Todds actually came in, and you had to have that class before they would, and during that class, a part of it was applying for your FCC license to be on the radio. And when you were on the air, you had to have that little license with you. It had to be on you, in your possession, in case the FCC, did a pop-up visit or whatever. They never did. They were not going to come to Washington for that. But it was just one of the requirements. And it was amazing. That's when I first kind of got interested in it. But I was like, this will help me do interviews when I'm a corporate attorney. This is not what I'm going to do. And, but again, all of that was a part of my training and God getting me ready for what he had planned for me.
And you described the editing. Editing has obviously changed a lot.
A whole lot.
But tell us a little bit briefly about what was editing like at that
Oh my gosh.
time.
Well, you had two big machines, and you would have to load in, and then there were like cartridges that were about this long and about that wide, and you'd have to go back and forth. You'd have to record your voice on one, and then your video would be on the other, and you'd have to go back and forth, and you'd have to make sure that it was loaded just right. And I don't know what I was doing, but every time I would put mine in, it was like it was jumping the truck. It was always some problem. And Dr. Lytle was so patient with me. He was so patient with me and would help me get through that process. But back then, it would take a minimum of an hour and a half to 2 hours to edit a story. Whereas now, with the equipment, I can edit a story at my desk. There are not those big machines. We have computer chips, and once the video is loaded from that chip, I can edit from my desk, my desktop. And back then, that was unheard of. And even in commercial television, because I had had that experience editing, I was one of the few people who would edit because they had photographers who would do that. And I got in trouble because at that time, WLBT had a union. And under the union agreement, I wasn't supposed to be editing. I was just supposed to be the talent, and I didn't know that. But because I had learned so much here, I was able to do. But their machines were still a little bit different. And in my career, I think we've had a minimum of 10 different systems that we've used for editing. So I've had to learn each one of those systems. But it was really great that what we did at Mississippi College was so similar to what they were doing in commercial television.
Tell me, we're going to go back to what ways did MC prepare you for your 40 plus years that you've had at the station?
Well, I think the very first thing is that when I came here, there was not one person who made me feel like, I grew up on a farm in Crystal Springs, Mississippi, and to have people reinforce over and over again, and you know, your family can tell you that, and people that you love can tell you that, but it has so much more impact when people who don't know you, who talk to you and have conversations with you, and they tell you, you've got a great future ahead of you. You can do whatever you put your mind to. And Mississippi College, the people here did that for me. And then I think the most important thing, and number one for me, was faith. I grew up in the Baptist church, and faith and my relationship with God was so important to me, but it was reinforced here. Going to Bible classes, learning more, just delving into the Old Testament and the New Testament. And I had the best Bible teacher, and I cannot remember his name, but and we would have the best conversations. And I'll never forget when we started talking about the upper room and studying the upper room and its importance, and it's amazing how I remember that part of the class, but it was just so amazing to me, and it was like God was just over and over again telling me, I've got you. I've got you. You've left me many times, but I've never left you. And Mississippi College kept giving me that over and over again, and it was that faith that has kept me going, that has sustained me, and that's the most important thing. And then you combine that with the education here. You can't find better professors. And as I mentioned, my advisor didn't wait for me to come to her. She checked in on me and, how are your classes going? Do you need help with anything? Is there something that we can do to make the classes more effective for you? And I was like blown away. I was like, she cares about me. She wants to make sure I have what I need. And the great thing is, and I hope more students understand that, it was not because I was special. Mississippi College does that for its students. And that's so important, especially today, because There's so many distractions. And back then we had distractions, but nothing like today. And they did. They checked on you. Dr. Lytle checked in on me. Dr. Lytle kept in touch with me throughout my career, not just here, but then once I got to WLBT. Like I said, I think other than my parents, he probably was one of the most happy people in the world that I ended up at WLBT and on television. He was so proud. And I would tell him all the time, Dr. Lytle, you planted the seeds, and this is what they've grown into. And I could not be more grateful. So I can't tell you a part of my life that Mississippi College has not had some part in. And now I have the friendship, and I respect and admire so much Dr. Thompson and what he's doing on this campus, and the way that students are treated and nurtured here. That's why when you asked me to come back, I'm here, because I am so grateful, and I owe so much to Mississippi College.
And my last question for you is to walk through the day of your 2020 graduation in more detail. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about how that all took place in real time?
Oh my gosh, it is so surreal, Elijah. Well, I came thinking that I was going to be doing an interview with Dr. Thompson. He invited me over, and I had been talking with my dear friend who was my classmate, who now actually works here on the campus, and we had been going over and over again. I said, I've got to get my degree. I've got to finish this. And I actually came and took some classes on campus. It was a history class and a math class, and I'm trying to remember the other one. The other one nearly drove me batty. And I think it was management information systems. I think that's what it was, because it was dealing with, my editing system I thought was the most complicated thing there is. But this, I was like, Lord, this is not for me. If you just help me with this class, help me, Lord. But loved history. The math class was interesting, and because I had to come on the curriculum that was in place at that time, so it added more hours. So it was more than 3 classes now, because I thought, oh yeah, I'll go knock out the 3 classes and I'm done. And so Dr. Thompson called me up and asked me about doing the interview, and I was so excited. And then when I got here, it was not really an interview. He was saying that we're honoring outstanding women who have been a part of the Mississippi College family, and we'd like for you to be one of those people. And I was floored. I was like, that is awesome. I was so excited. And he said, well, if you put on the cap and gown, and Tracy was in on all of this. I had no idea. It was a complete surprise. And nobody told me anything, okay? So I go and I put the cap and gown on, and I think I'm coming out to do an interview. And when I step through the doors, there's graduation music. And I see all these people who had not been there, and they all have on caps and gowns, and we get Dr. Thompson, because Tracy helped me get dressed. And I'm like, what is going on? And then I realize, and I started crying. I didn't know whether to jump up and down. I was trying to be professional, but at the same time, I could not be more thrilled and humbled and honored. It was just amazing. Like I said, it was a dream. It was a dream come true. I was walking on clouds. And then to get my degree, to hold, and you talk about being thoughtful. I got it in my full name. My real name is Magnolia. I was named after my grandmother, and I was Magnolia when I was on the campus here. And so I have a degree with Magnolia Wade Dixon. And then I have one that's Maggie Wade. So let me tell you, it was the most amazing day I've had. In all the years I've been at WLBT, there aren't a lot of days that could top that day, because it's so important to me to be able to say I'm a Mississippi College graduate, that this is my school, this is my home, and I have my degree from here. And it meant so much to me, and to finally have that, because so many people cared enough about me to make that happen. And Dr. Thompson said, you've done everything that we need you to do and that's required of you to earn your degree. You've done all of that. I don't know why it hasn't happened sooner, but it happened when it was supposed to. And it happened when God planned for it to happen. And I think it happened when I could appreciate it. I could not appreciate it more than when it happened. And to see my children and the joy and my husband when they saw it, because they knew that was something that I really and truly wanted to accomplish. It was on my list at the top of the list, and to be able to have that just meant the world to me.
Is there anything else you want to say overall?
I guess the best thing, when you're choosing where you want to be for your college education, it's more than about your education. It's about how you grow as a person. It's about how you treat people. And one of my favorite quotes is by Maya Angelou, who says, "People may forget what you say, they may forget what you do, but they never forget how you make them feel." And that's what Mississippi College is. I felt important. I felt like I mattered. I felt like my future mattered. And that's so important because getting a college education is not easy. You have to work hard. But having people who are in your corner, people who are cheering for you every single day, people who are investing their time and energy, who are planting seeds in your life, that is so important. And that's what I got here. And I'm forever grateful. And if I ever get Oprah Winfrey's money, Mississippi College is going to get a big chunk of it. So we can continue that tradition, so we can continue that for students who I think need it today more than ever before. And that's why I said there's nothing too great. If I can serve this institution in any way, Mississippi College, this is family. And I'm so, so proud to be a part of the Mississippi College family.